So many people are way too harsh on themselves, right? Like, oh, I'm such a basement dweller, right? Because I don't go out and really socialize that much. But the thing is, so many people who think that they're, introverts are actually real introverts from what I've witnessed. I think it looks like you're just an introvert, but in reality, you're just in the wrong social environment. And you've been in the wrong social environment for years, or maybe even longer than that. And you've kind of just never actually figured out what type of communicator you are, like what type of socializer you are, what environment makes it so that it's the easiest for you to socialize in, right? A lot of people don't actually know that because they never found or discovered the right environment for them. And here's the thing, right? I don't think most people are actually true introverts. Most people, I would say, are actually, selective extroverts. And what I mean by that is you only are able to be more open and put yourself out there when you're around the right people. That's most people. And I think a part of the big misconception is that, in order to be an extrovert, you have to be one of those people that can just spout off anything with anyone, right? You can just be in any social environment. You're like a cheap loudspeaker that can just play music anywhere, right? It doesn't really matter like what type of people you're with, but that's just one specific type of extrovert. Most people aren't that type. And I know I'm not that type either. And I used to call myself so introverted, but I don't think I'm introverted either. I just think we're so quick to label ourselves something before we actually truly, figured out what the extent of our potential is, right? And what we're actually like when the environment actually favors us for once, right? I think, so if that's you, right? Try to maybe put yourself into a favorable environment and see how that goes. Because unless you're like shy with your parents still, I wouldn't say you're a real introvert, or maybe as introverted as you might think, right? Imagine yourself as like the best version of yourself. You've done everything you wanted to do. You've achieved all the dreams, life goals that you wanted to achieve. And you're just in your most happiest place ever, right? And you walk into a room full of your friends. Do you really think that you still be closed off? You still be, struggling to think of things to say, right? And do you still think that your social battery would be drained and then, you'd feel worse after socializing instead of feeling better, instead of, hanging out with your mates? If that still increases your energy, then you're not introverted at all. You're just a selective extrovert. That's all, right? And I think we can get so caught up in like ruminating over things. So much of what we stress over are actually like warranted. And what I mean by not warranted is we stress before so much things before they've actually happened yet. Like how I said about how we're so quick to label ourselves as something. And I think part of the reason why we're so quick to, just judge ourselves is because I think it's really difficult when you withdraw and then you stop socializing for a while, because, it's hard for society to tell between whether, you're antisocial, as in you're just a complete, recluse, or like a hermit, or like a menace to society, versus whether you're just recalibrating yourself. Those two can look really similar at first. And that's definitely something that, it's really difficult to navigate when you're in the middle of doing it, right? When you're in the middle of, reinventing yourself, so to speak, or even just like withdrawing, not because you don't like socializing, but because you're really figuring yourself out, right? That's when it's really difficult for people to distinguish between whether you're actually just a hermit, or you're in the middle of a transformation stage. And another reason why I think that it's difficult, because people don't want to grapple with the dark areas of yourself, right? With the negative aspects. You're trying to, stay away from the fire, so to speak. You're not trying to get burnt. But here's the thing, right? If you avoid the fire altogether, you can never forge yourself into something that you truly want, right? You gotta, in order to protect yourself against, things like the negative aspects of yourself, you gotta understand it first. And in order to understand it, you can't shy away from it. You gotta figure that aspect of yourself first, right? There's this really negative, I guess, ideology in society right now where people think that, humans are inherently good or bad, right? And there can be outliers and stuff like that. But I think the majority of people are just a product of their upbringing, their environment, and there's also a biological factor to it as well, right? I'm not denying that. But a large amount of who you are is based on what factors shaped your, childhood, what factors shaped your environment growing up. And a very bad ideology, I think, is lumping someone into, or they're just good or they're just inherently bad. Because, people can, when pushed, I think everyone has a certain point where when pushed they'll do something, that we consider bad as a society, right? And people are so quick to jump onto, the train of saying, oh, well, if that made them break, right? If that was their breaking point, then that means that they were bad all along. But I don't think that's the case, right? And we have to understand that as a society. Because if we don't, then we risk not being protected against, the dark side, the negative side of human nature. The more you understand about what you're fighting, what the enemy is, right, the more safer you are against it. That's generally what I think. And I know it's a long side tangent that I'm going on here, but I just think that it applies in this context where you just gotta be comfortable with, asking yourself some of the harder questions, right? You gotta not shy away from dealing with those negative aspects of yourself. I wanted to end this video off with a quote from Seneca, right? He basically says that he who suffers before it's necessary suffers more than necessary. And that basically just tells us so much of, our anxiety comes from things we fabricate from our mind before something bad's actually happened. And I think that can really help you come to terms with how much of your hardship is actually self-inflicted or can be self-inflicted, right? That's something to think about. That will be it for this video for now. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.